Hello, Becky here. Today I'm going to show you how to set up standard deductions inside revenue settlements. This would be for your owner-operators if there are things that you are taking out on a regular basis from their settlement. For example, insurance payments. I see IFTA payments if the company is paying for IFTA and they're reimbursing you for it. Also truck and trailer rental payments or lease payments, things like that. This is how you go ahead and set those up. There's two steps. The first step is we need to set them up as a standard deduction code. And then once we have the code set up, then we can go ahead and apply that code to the actual IDs. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So to set up the codes, we're going to go up to Maintenance, and we are going to go down to Standard Deduct Code Setup. By default, it's empty. So you're going to get an empty screen here. And for each one, you'll hit Add. And I'm going to do an insurance one. So for the code, I'm going to type in INS for insurance. You have up to 5 characters for that. And then a description, I'm just going to type in insurance payment. And that can be whatever it is that you want. And there's 2 options on this screen, 1099 status and percent of gross. Those are both 99% of the time set to no, because a lot of times these deductions are not included in the 1099 because it's not part of the driver's regular compensation for the service they're providing you. You're usually just collecting something back that they owe you. And percent of gross is if this deduction was a percentage of what their gross was. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. You would fill this in for any deductions that you need. Once that's filled in, the next step is to go ahead and actually apply those codes to an ID. So I'm going to hit Exit. I'm going to go back up to Maintenance, and I'm going to go to Standard Deduction Setup. When this screen comes up, what you'll do is you'll choose your ID from the drop-down. If you click your drop-down, you would see all the IDs you have set up. So I'm going to just choose this first one. And then I want to add. So I'm going to come down to the bottom and click on Add. The screen's going to come up. It's going to show you which ID you had selected, and it's going to default in the date for you. Tractor ID would be the tractor that you want tied to this. The code, this has to do with that first step when we set up the codes. So if I click on the drop down, I only have one code in there, that insurance one. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that. And you'll notice it grabs the description I typed in, and it grabs my 1099 and my percent of gross settings. Those were both set to 0. Now this next section where it says interval, you have a choice between week, day, bi-week, month. You can set that. It's completely optional. You can also optionally put in a number of times retrieved payment so far. So if you're just setting this up and you've retrieved it 10 times and you need to retrieve it 15 and you're keeping track, that's where you can put those numbers in here. Not required. Description, it's going to grab that description that you put in for the code. You can type what you want in here if you want it to be changed. Reference is completely optional. Unit, this is always going to be 1, because how this works is your total is always basically going to take the unit times the rate. So if you put unit as 1, and then the rate for whatever amount it is that you want it to be, and hit enter, it's going to calculate your unit for you. And the account, I guess one thing, if you don't know what the amount's going to be each time, it's going to be different. For rate, you can type in a 0. And it will pull that 0 across for you, so it'll grab all the information and you can manually type in the amount at that point in time. Account, this first section is the department number, and if I double click my mouse there, it's going to pull up the list, and that's always going to be 000. And the account number itself, this is going to be either an expense account or liability account, depending on what it is. So if this is an insurance deduction, assuming I already paid that insurance, so I've already hit my expense in my general ledger, and I'm going to collect it back from this owner operator, so I want this to go hit that expense account. So what I would do is I can double click here, And I can scroll down to the insurance accounts, and it looks like account 6040 is cargo insurance, and we'll say it was for cargo insurance. So I'm going to double click that. And so how that works, when I paid the premiums for that insurance, I would have hit that account. And so now I'm going to collect some of that back from this owner operator. So when I post this, it'll pull that expense out of the account for me. So it'll be a real snapshot of my actual expense. And say if this was for IFTA tax, you would choose the IFTA expense account. If this was a liability, say they owed you money and you were taking out payments, you would choose the liability account that you set up for that. So then we hit accept, and now I have it set up. And so how we collect these, I'm going to hit exit. So when I'm processing settlements, I'll click on process settlements, and I would go to my carrier that I would like to collect this from. Most people, they'll create a new trip number to put all these expenses under because it doesn't really tie in with any particular trip. Like if I'm collecting an insurance payment, for example, it doesn't have anything to do with any trip detail. And when I print out my settlement report, I'd like it kind of separated into its own trip. So what they'll do is they'll come down and hit new. And it'll ask you for a date. It'll default to days. You can always change it if you'd like, and you hit OK. The screen's going to come up that looks exactly like if you were processing a regular trip. All that you need to do on here is come down and click on the Retrieve Standard Deduction button. It's going to show you all the deductions that you set up for that particular ID. You're going to choose which ones you want by using this select toggle, so I can mark that yes. Now let's say you had a handful of them in there and you don't want to click on each one individually. There is a select all that you can use. Also an unselect all. So you would choose the one that you want and you would hit retrieve the selection. So in this one, for example, it came across as 0 because it changes each time and I want to type it in. So now that it's come across, now I can type in how much I want that deduction to be for. So I just typed in the amount I want it, and it gives me my amount, and you'll see it pulled in my chart of accounts, account I specified, and I can see what code it was. And then I hit save. And now you'll notice in the trips that are listed for this particular owner operator, there's one that shows negative 230. And so anything that they owe you, or you're possibly reimbursing them for, I guess too, would be put under this RS trip. And then you would go ahead and post and process that trip with all of their other trips, and it will take their deductions out for you.